Every year, thousands of people move to Fort Worth chasing new opportunities, a lower cost of living, and that Texas lifestyle you've probably heard about. But there's one really big mistake that a lot of people don't realize they're making until it's too late. So today I'm going to break down the biggest mistakes people make when they're moving to Fort Worth, and we're also going to cover the little things that cause some of the biggest regrets, like picking the wrong suburb, buying the wrong communities, and simply just misjudging commute time. So stick around, because the biggest mistake, it's the one that most people really never see coming. I call it the property tax bomb. And what I'm talking about is when you're buying new construction in Fort Worth, Texas, at the beginning of it, the county is assessing your property taxes on the land alone. So you might get your closing statement and you're buying a $600,000 home. It's quite possible the tax bill is only $2,000 a year. And you're thinking, oh, I just won the property tax lottery. You didn't win the property tax lottery. What's happening is you're only being taxed on the land. And so the county is going to, and it might take somewhere between 12, 18 months, maybe 24 months in some cases before the taxes are caught up to where they should be. And overnight, when that happens, your taxes can jump 300 to 500% of what they were. So you're paying $2,000 a year, and that easily could go to 10, 12, 15,000. We've seen it jump quite a bit. So that property tax bomb is one of the big things you got to look for when you're buying new construction. The only other time we'll see something like that with existing homes is when the property value by the county is assessed incredibly low, well below market value. That doesn't happen often. It does occasionally, but it's very rare. It doesn't happen that much. The next thing that you need to be aware of is the homestead exemption. It will help some, but it's not going to make, it's not going to cut it by like half, but it can make a huge difference. And there also is one thing I need to mention too. If you're a veteran and you have a VA disability, especially if it's 100% and you're not aware of this, you need to know that in Texas, I don't know about other states, but I know for sure in Texas, if you're a veteran and it's your primary residence, your property taxes are waived when you have a VA disability at 100%. So that's an important detail to know for the veterans out there. So homestead exemption, that applies to most of the tax entities. So when we talk about tax rate averages around 1.7 to 2%, there are some areas where the taxes are higher. We'll get into that in a minute, but the homestead exemption applies a reduction on the tax value. So if you're taxed at $600,000, that's the value the county assesses. The homestead exemption will come in and drop that. The school tax exemption is now at $100,000. And there's some areas that are giving above that. So that's a really important thing to know. And you can file that as soon as you are the owner of record, usually 3 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in there from the time you close. So it's a really important detail to know. But in addition to the property tax bomb, the next big mistake that we see is people misunderstanding or just not recognizing the commute that they're going to be making in their daily life. And, this is usually folks that haven't worked with us. It might be somebody that gets referred to us from one of our clients, but most of the time we see this from folks that are working outside of our team. And so the drastic difference between come out, especially if you're from out of town, you come in on the weekend, that's really common. Everything's wonderful. The weekend traffic's usually not that bad. And you think, oh, this is, a cakewalk. If you're looking at buying in Prosper or Frisco, or if you're in the middle of Keller, Texas, and you've got to go to either one of the downtown, Dallas or Fort Worth, that commute's going to be 2 or 3 times what it would be on the weekend versus going out on the week. So our recommendation is, when you come in to look at property, especially if you're from out of town, take an extra day. If you're not going to be here during the week, add 1 extra day before you leave, Monday, or come out Friday. That way you can drive. Like if you're serious about a neighborhood and you want to know what is this commute actually going to look like, that's an important thing to do, because you'll get a real life experience of, okay, if I lived here, this is what my commute's going to be like if you're going to be working and commuting. So obviously if you're not commuting, it doesn't matter. So that also kind of leads us into the next thing, which is selling too soon. So, the one reason, especially for folks that are new to Texas, why they would sell is they're unhappy with the commute. If you're selling inside 3 to 5 years, it's really difficult to break even on that property. It's a rare thing that we see folks able to sell within 3 to 5 years from the time they purchase, because you've got costs to sell the house. If you're talking about a $500,000 home, on average, at least 30 grand, realtor fees, title fees, closing costs on the seller side, you got to give a tax proration to the buyer. So there's expenses that go into it. And most people, they're not buying, we generally don't recommend buying, especially if it's where you're going to live, buying a home and staying there for less than 5 years. Like, that just doesn't make sense. But again, these are scenarios that people are coming to us and asking for help because they either didn't do the research or the people they were working with didn't inform them and give them additional things to think about. So selling too soon, it can cost you an arm and a leg. So it's something to look out for. The other reason with selling too soon is the school zone. Then this leads into something personal for me. So you back up like 15 years ago, we were living in a community and it was great, new construction, new schools. Like literally the elementary school was 2 blocks from our house, maybe 2.5 blocks. Like it was just right there. Okay, so fast forward, like we were in the house, I think 3.5 years. We get a notice from the school district. They're redrawing boundary lines. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And boy, did I learn my lesson. We didn't do research. Nobody said anything. I was completely unaware that this was even a thing. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really understand what it meant. And so not only did we fight against it, me and gosh, it felt like there were a dozen dads. We went in every single house getting a petition to get the district to not change it because it was going to break up. There were families that it didn't make any logical sense. So the point of what I'm saying is, if you're buying a new construction, there's a strong chance, because there's been so much rapid growth, almost every school district is feeling the growing pains from that. So if you're buying new construction, there's a strong chance the school campuses that you think you're going to go to, if there are older subdivisions close by, older campuses close by, there may be changes. So I guess the takeaway for this would be just do some research and ask those questions. If you have school age kids and you want to make sure you're not getting pushed around when something changes, or be aware that there are changes coming and be prepared for that.